Dra'Gora, Draenor's Honor, Chapter 6, The Mag'har. Deep in the heart of the savage land, the smoke of forges and the distant sound of war horns echoed off the rock walls. The valley was alive with the Mag'har. Makeshift tents were pitched between rock faces, and banners of old clans fluttered in the wind. They were unmistakable crests of the Frostwolf, Thunderlord, Laughing Skull, and most prominently the War Song, the snarling, wolf-head symbol of Grommash Hellscream's own. They had found this after wandering through Gorgron's scorching caverns. Drom Gronnheart and the Dra'Gora emerged from the jagged pass, ragged but defiant. The civilians they had saved filed in behind them, and finally emerged into the camp of the Mag'har. They collapsed into the arms of their kin. There were tears of relief, and for a moment the settlement was filled with the sounds of reunion. But the eyes of other Mag'har warriors were hard and unforgiving as they fell upon the Dra'Gora. The Dra'Gora were marked by their wounds, exhaustion, and the blood of their enemies. "Look who drags himself back from the dead," barked a mocking voice. Karnak Stonehand, a grizzled Blackrock veteran, spat at Drom's feet. "We thought you'd joined the ancestors already, Gronnheart. Maybe you should have." Drom said nothing, only meeting Karnak's gaze with a stoic silence. He had no energy left at that time for words. He was covered in dirt and dried blood, the toll of the journey etched into his very bones. He turned away from Karnak's jeers, guiding his warriors towards a secluded corner of the camp, but the murmur of disdain from the gathered Mag'har warriors followed him. As they passed a large tent, the entrance flung open, and out stepped Gaara, the fierce daughter of Durotan. Her presence was commanding, her armor shining with the marks of battle. She regarded Drom with a critical eye, as though assessing a piece of flawed iron. She spared no words for Drom, but the gaze alone was enough to speak 1,000 words, and they were not kind. The members of the Dra'Gora bristled, but Drom simply bowed his head. They carried on beyond Gaara until they met with another face. Again, Karnak Stonehand had found them. "What scraps of victory do you bring us today, Drom? Or are you here only to swell our numbers with the broken and the weak?" "We bring survivors, Karnak," he said evenly, "and we bring word of the lightbound sweep through Tanaan. If we do not prepare, they will be upon us by nightfall." Karnak's lips curled with disdain. "You bring survivors, but at what cost?" he barked mockingly. "Kargul Earthshaker, dead. Ogra, dead. Your force is a shadow of what it once was. Perhaps it is time for you to step aside, Gronnheart. Let those with true strength lead." Drom clenched his jaw, his knuckles white around the haft of his axe. He opened his mouth to speak, but Ragnar stepped forward, his face twisted in fury. "You dare speak of strength?" Ragnar snarled, pointing a bloodied finger at Karnak, a commander of the Mag'har. "Where were you when the Lightbound ambushed us? Where were your warriors when we were buried beneath holy fire, fighting for our lives?" The gathered Mag'har turned their attention to Ragnar, murmuring amongst themselves. "You speak out of turn, Warsong," he said icily. "Know your place." "My place?" Ragnar spat on the ground. "My place is with the Dra'Gora, the warriors who bled for this land while you sat here, polishing your blades." Thara Wildblade, one of the Laughing Skull, stepped in beside Ragnar. Her voice was wild like the wind through the canyons. "We lost brothers and sisters out there," she said. "Ogra, Kargul, and so many others. They died so these people could be here, safe, right now, and you dare disrespect Drom after he risked his life to protect us all?" The tension in the camp rose like steam from the forges. The warriors of the Dra'Gora stepped forward, their weapons still drawn, faces painted with the blood of battle. They formed a tight line behind Drom, standing shoulder to shoulder in defiance of the dismissive glares from the other Maghar. Even children joined in. A low, rumbling laugh broke the silence, and the crowd parted as Gredok Boneknuckle stepped into the clearing, another commander of the Maghar, his eyes burning with a fire that had seen countless battles, his hair silvery gray and unkempt. He looked over the gathered orcs, his gaze settling on Drom, then the Dra'Gora and the survivors, and then finally on Karnak.
"What is this?"
Gredok demanded.
"I hear the roar of warriors, but I see no battlefield. Has a Gorgrond become a place for bickering whelps?"
Drom stepped forward, unstable in his footing due to the many fights and exhaustion. "We fought our way through Tanaan to bring the survivors here. We lost Kargul and Ogra, and many others who we could not save. The Lightbound will overwhelm us in days, if not tomorrow." Gredok's eyes narrowed as he looked between Drom and Karnak. Karnak was about to speak, but Gredok's hand rose to silence Karnak.
"You have the fire of the Iron Wolf in you, Gronnheart," he said slowly. "But fire alone does not win wars. I see your warriors, tired, bloodied, and few in number. But I also see their loyalty. That is worth more than all the iron in Gorgrond."
He turned to the gathered Maghar warriors.
"Let any who doubt the strength of the Dra'Gora step forward. For they have faced the Lightbound head-on and lived to tell the tale. They have brought back kin, old, young, children. It matters not. We should rejoice. Is there anyone who would dare challenge Gronnheart after the sacrifices he has made?"
A murmur rippled through the crowd, but none stepped forward. Ragnar smirked, wiping a streak of blood from his cheek.
"That's what I thought,"
he muttered. There were none who stepped forward, not until Karnak did. His heavy boots crunched over the rocky ground, and a murmur of surprise rippled through the gathered Maghar. Karnak's expression was hard. The ridges of his scarred face twisted into a sneer. He was a warrior who had seen countless battles, a veteran of war, but his eyes gleamed with something darker, contempt. He leveled his gaze at Drom, then back at Gredok.
"I will speak, Commander."
Karnak rumbled, his voice like the grind of stone against steel.
"For too long we have whispered our doubts in the shadows. Let us bring them into the light."
Gredok's eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance passing across his features.
"You have the right to speak, Karnak,"
he said, his tone dangerous.
"But choose your words carefully."
Karnak laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. He stepped closer, glaring down at Drom Gronnheart, who stood stoic and unmoving.
"This is Drom Gronnheart, the so-called leader of the Dra'Gora. He turned away from the Maghar in pursuit to save these whelps, orcs who cannot fend for themselves. What use do we have with warriors who are too frail and weak to raise a blade, who do not bring any worth, yet every time he returns from battle, fewer warriors stand by his side. He leads our warriors into the maw of the Lightbound and comes back with nothing but tales of glory and death."
The crowd bristled, divided. Some nodded in agreement, emboldened by Karnak's words, while others clenched their fists, anger flashing in their eyes. The members of the Dra'Gora tensed, their hands twitching towards their weapons. but Drom held up a hand, stopping them. He met Karnak's gaze with an unflinching calm, and responded, "We lost many, it's true," Drom said quietly, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Kargul, Ogra, they fell so others could live. It's a sacrifice they made willingly, one that you would not understand, Karnak." Karnak snarled, baring his teeth. "What good are your sacrifices, Drom?" he snapped. "The dead cannot fight, and the Lightbound care nothing for your noble deaths. You cling to honor like it's a shield, but it won't save you when the holy fire rains down again." Before Drom could respond, Draenor stepped forward, slamming the butt of his spear into the ground. His voice was a thunderclap of fury. "You speak of honor like it's a weakness, Karnak," he growled. "But it's your cowardice that stinks the air. Where were you when the Lightbound ambushed us? Hiding in the shadows, sharpening your weapons while our blood stained the earth. You're a coward." A chorus of agreement rose from the Dra'Gora. Thara Wildblade leapt to her feet, a wild grin on her face. "You call us few, Karnak, but few can do what we have done. We have fought our way through Tanaan, through the very jaws of light-bound hounds, while you sat here, squabbling like a toothless whelp. Call it strategizing, call it whatever you want. You were hiding." Karnak's face twisted in rage, and he lunged forward, grabbing Thara by the collar. "Laughing skull filth!" he roared. "I've killed more of your clan than you've seen the sunrise, girl." But Thara did not flinch. She spat in Karnak's face, the spit flecked with blood. "And yet here you are, cowering behind insults," she hissed. "We are Dra'Gora. We bleed for each other. What do you bleed for, Karnak? Your own pride?" Before the situation could escalate further, Gredok stepped between them, his presence like a looming storm. He shoved Karnak and Thara back with a single, powerful thrust, his eyes blazing with fury. "Enough!" Gredok roared, his voice shaking the very earth. He glared at Karnak, then at the crowd, his face etched with the lines of scrutiny. "You speak of the Dra'Gora as though they are nothing. But they have done something daring, and have returned with more warriors, who I am sure will prove their worth in time. They faced the Lightbound head-on and brought us survivors to our camp. They've bled for our people while you doubt from the safety of your tents. It's no lie that you fought well, Karnak. You are strong. It is why you are titled Commander. But do not go staining that title needlessly." He turned his full gaze on Karnak, and the warrior faltered, his bravado crumbling under the fellow commander's scrutiny. "You doubt their worth, Stonehand?" Gredok said, his voice low and deadly. "Then prove it. Take up your axe and face the Dra'Gora yourself, or hold your tongue and show the respect they've earned." Karnak hesitated, his eyes darting to the gathered warriors of the Dra'Gora, who stared back at him with a cold, unflinching resolve. He swallowed hard, like swallowing an iron ingot, and the sneer fell from his lips. Karnak clenched his jaw, his massive hands gripping the hilt of his axe. Instead of backing down, the warrior took a step forward, pushing past Gredok's imposing figure. He stared directly at Drom Gronnheart, his lips curling in a sneer. "I will not bow to you, Gronnheart," he spat, his voice ringing out in pure disgust. "You lead our warriors to their deaths and call it honor. I call it arrogance." Gredok's eyes narrowed dangerously, his hand twitching towards the axe at his side. "Karnak," his voice warned, "Hellscream will not like us squabbling like whelps amongst one another, let alone fight while we face the Lightbound." But Karnak only laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. He raised his axe high, pointing it directly at Drom.
If you're half the warrior your followers believe you to be, then prove it. Face me, here and now. Let's see who truly deserves the respect of the Maghar.
Ragnar stepped forward, his face furious.
Karnak, you're a fool. You challenge the honor of the Dra'Gora and insult the memory of those we've lost. Stand aside before you dig your own grave.
In the meantime, Drom focused on the thumping in his chest, which grew increasingly louder and harsher, silencing the noise around him. But Karnak's sneer only deepened. He swung his axe in a wide arc, the blade glinting in the firelight.
Enough talk, he roared. If the Dra'Gora are as mighty as you claim, then let your leader prove it in blood.
Before anyone could intervene, Drom stepped forward, holding up a hand to halt his warriors. He met Karnak's gaze with a cold, unyielding stare.
If this is what you want, Karnak, then so be it. But know this, there will be no mercy.
Drom began to undo the armor that was crafted. Steel and bone, inlined with fur, dropped to the ground. It revealed countless cuts, bruises, and burns covering his body. He was a staunch and powerful figure. The others, both those of the Dra'Gora and the Maghar, stepped back, clearing space between Drom and Karnak. Drom then drew his weapon, an axe who had numerous dents in it. Blood, both fresh and dried, still lingered on its blade, and Drom's eyes flared with exhaustion. He moved into a fighting stance, his muscles coiled and ready.
I've waited a long time for this, to see you cut down, to see your false honor bleed into the dirt.
Karnak spoke. The fight began with a clash of steel that echoed through the camp, catching the attention of other Maghar who came in to observe. Karnak lunged, swinging his axe in a brutal arc. Drom sidestepped, deflecting the blow with the flat of his axe. He could feel the raw power behind Karnak's attack, a testament to the strength of orc kind. When Karnak came at him again, each blow was aimed to kill, but Drom parried with calculated precision, stepping back and letting Karnak exhaust himself.
Is this the best you have, Stonehand?
Drom taunted, his voice calm yet heavy with labored breathing.
No wonder you hide behind your bluster.
Drom's heart was beating like thunder. He was exhausted and tired, and yet so hateful that someone would disrespect the sacrifices his brethren had made. Karnak charged again, bringing his axe down in a two-handed strike meant to split Drom in half. But Drom was ready. He sidestepped the blow and brought his axe up, slashing across Karnak's side. Blood sprayed the air, a crimson arc that stained the earth. Karnak staggered back, clutching his wounds, looking baffled, his face twisted in shock.
You cut me? You, of all orcs, it is you who cuts me? Pah, I'll get you like the swine you are.
Drom rushed forward, wasting little breath and time to pursue his opponent. He slammed the back of his fist into the jaw of Karnak, forcing him back, but Karnak was swift to respond. Lines etched in his face that cried of rage and hatred, but he swung his stone-like hand, knocking the wind from Drom. Drom staggered back, coughing up blood on the stone. His muscles tensed, and the thumping of his heartbeat grew the loudest it would grow. His eyes turned bloodshot, and with a fearsome, rageful, and terrible cry of rage he stormed forth. The onlookers caught in awe as they saw the fury of Dra'Gora. One slice, a deadly arc slashing across Karnak's chest. Karnak fell to his knees, gasping for breath, blood pouring from the deep gash. He looked up at Drom, his expression twisted with rage and fear.
You're no better than the Lightbound,
he spat. Drom stared him down, his face full of determination.
"I am nothing like them," he said quietly. "I fight for the Maghar, our survival. You fight for your own pride."
With a final swift motion, Drom swung his axe. The steel bit into Karnak's neck, severing his head from his shoulders. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath as the head rolled across the ground, coming to a stop at Ragnor's feet. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, Ragnor leaned down, picking up Karnak's head by its hair. He then passed his glance to Drom. Graddock left wordlessly, most likely going to inform Grommash Hellscream of the occurrences. Drom was already mentally preparing himself for the consequences of his actions. Killing a commander does not come without repercussion. Ragnor peered at Drom, who looked like he was about to drop dead that moment. He hesitated and moved over, acting like he was about to hand the head of Karnak to Drom. Instead, he offered support, dropping the head to the ground. "You did well, friend," he whispered in Drom's ear. The crowd began to murmur, voices rising in support of Drom and the Dra'Gora. The dissent had been quelled, at least for now. Drom looked out at the gathered Maghar, his heart heavy but resolute, the path ahead still fraught with danger. But now, for the first time in days, or even weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. He turned to his warriors, the Dra'Gora, and gave a nod. "We rest tonight," he said, his voice low but filled with a quiet strength. "Tomorrow we march once more, for the fallen, for the living, and for the Maghar." And as the fires burned brightly into the night, the Dra'Gora stood together, united in their grief and their resolve, ready to face whatever the dawn would bring. Thank you so much for listening to Dra'Gora, Draenor's Honor, my own novella, which was inspired by Heartlands. I am already working on making a couple of new ones, so I'm hoping that you really enjoyed this one. I will be making new ones, and I will be trying to improve on my writing skills, improve on my narration skills, and all of that. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.